This conference is brought to you by ColdStack, React and React Native development experts.
Hi everyone, I'm Khalef and I'm really excited to be here to talk to you about React Native for desktop platforms. So a little bit about myself. I am an engineering manager at Microsoft and I work in the Office division. Before becoming an engineering manager, I was an engineer and I worked primarily on accessibility. And when it comes to React Native, I have been in this space for the last couple of years now. I really like how with React Native you can learn the technology once and then be able to run your apps anywhere you need to. And you can imagine that for applications like Office, such technology is really important because our code base has millions of lines of code. And so we really benefit from being able to share our code across multiple platforms, as well as reapply the same technology across. We've seen a lot of engagement around React Native at Microsoft as well. Like there are multiple apps and features that have been built, either brownfield or greenfield applications, using React Native, and we have a nice little ecosystem that keeps growing every day. So this is a very, very exciting place to be, and I'm glad to be here to talk to you a little bit about how we are evolving the desktop platforms. And so what we will talk about today, first, we'll go through the investments in React Native for Windows and macOS that have happened recently. And then we'll talk a little bit about some applications that have been built using those platforms. So let's go ahead and jump in and talk about React Native for Windows and for macOS. And as you probably know, this has been a journey for Microsoft for a few years now, with a lot of investments so that we can bring the power of React Native to the desktop platforms. And it's been a really nice partnership. Like we've worked very closely with Facebook to evolve those platforms. Lots of design meetings, discussions, alignment on directions and where we're going. And we've made a lot of improvements over the last few years. And the fact that we're seeing multiple applications shipping on top of that platform is really encouraging for the future. So let's talk a little bit about the investments that we've actually made. And when we think about those, we typically bucket them into three different areas. The first one is the core runtime itself. So think of this as the core of React Native that runs on user devices and allows you to build your experience on top. So we'll talk about that. Then we'll talk about some UI frameworks that we've built on top that allows you to augment the default experience that's provided with React Native. And finally, we'll talk a little bit about some tooling that is making our lives easier and hopefully will make yours as well. So let's jump in and talk about the runtime first, starting with React Native for macOS. And so the major highlight that we have for macOS is that we recently released version 0.63 of the platform. There are several improvements in it, including support for SVG for tooltip and keyloop. We are currently working on version 64 and expect this to be ready in the next few months. And there's also been a lot of really nice additions to community modules for macOS. So if you're interested, head over to reactnative.directory and then filter on macOS, and you will see all of the modules that are now currently supported. And then when it comes to React Native for Windows, we've released version 64, 0.64, and we're currently working on version 0.65. So one of the things that I would like to highlight here is that for this version 0.64, we were able to release React Native for Windows at the same time as the iOS and Android platforms version 0.64 as well were released. And this was something that was very important to us because what we want to make the upgrade process as seamless as possible and allow people to upgrade both the desktop and the mobile platforms at the same time. So we spent a lot of time getting Windows up to date and current with React Native, and then we're able to release that 0.64 simultaneously. Now, we are working on getting Mac there as well, such that once we're done, you will be able to see all four platforms being released at the same time. And then the next thing is we now have support for React Native Windows in Upgrade Helper. If you're not familiar with this, what Upgrade Helper is it's a place where you can go plug in your current version of React Native and plug in the version that you would like to upgrade to. And Upgrade Helper will show you what changed and how you can go ahead and update. It's a really cool tool, makes upgrading a lot easier. We've also improved the developer experience. So you are probably familiar you're probably familiar with Code Push already. So that technology was available on iOS and Android. And what it does is it allows you to update your bundles over the air without having to redeploy your application. It's very powerful, and it's now available natively in React Native for Windows as well. Code Push itself is part of our Visual Studio App Center offering. And if you head over to microsoft.github.io/codepush, you'll get more information on how to get started and leverage it. And the next thing I want to talk about is the documentation. So this is one place where we've spent a bit of time to improve what we have already, and we definitely want to spend a bit more time there, like getting the whole spectrum of our documentation out there for you to use. But right now, the biggest improvement is on the native API side. And so if you head over to our documentation site, you will see a lot more native APIs being documented, including like how to use it if you need to. Also, we want to make it easier to use React Native across multiple platforms. And in order to do that, we've increased the parity that we have in Windows with iOS and Android. So there are new props supported like accessibility info and platform version, and we have more coming up as well. So the next thing I want to talk about is your build time. And we have in experimental support right now a binary distribution. So what this is instead of consuming React Native for Windows as source code, you can consume binaries that have already been built and just start building your application on top. This is something that we've been experimenting with, and we've seen really, really good improvements to both build time and disk usage by doing that. So in our tests, the build time was about 80% faster, and the disk usage was about half of what it used to be. So this is still experimental. We're working to make it full production quality, but you can give it a shot and see if it works for you. And then let's talk about Hermes. So I'm sure everyone must have heard about Hermes right now, and how it improved both the startup time and the memory usage on the mobile platform. So we've had Hermes for some time in React Native Windows as well, and recently we've done a lot of work to make it easier to use. So first, in order to use Hermes, all you need to do is turn on one build flag, and we will take care of the rest. So we will package the runtime, we will do the bytecode generation and package this with the application, and then configure React Native for Windows to use Hermes instead of the default engine on Windows. And what we've seen is that the performance gains are similar to the ones that have been seen on mobile platforms as well. It's easier now to debug your application when you're using Hermes. We support direct debugging, and we've also recently added support for profiling, so you can see how your performance characteristics are measuring up. So Hermes right now is supported for our C++ applications, and we will have support for the C# ones as well in the future. And then let's talk about community modules. So these are, of course, super important in the ecosystem. And we've increased the number that is supported by Windows as well. There are a few here that I listed to give you an idea. For example, the React Native Sketch Canvas is one that I will talk about a little bit later in one of the demos. But I think at this point we support around 40 community modules. And if you want to see that full list that's supported, just head over to reactnative.directory and filter on Windows and you'll see them. So in summary, when we talk about React Native for Windows, it is much easier for you to upgrade to the more recent versions. As I mentioned, we have version 0.64 up and running. We are currently working on version 0.65. It should be available very soon. We've improved the developer experience. We've improved the support for Hermes. And also, we built React Native Windows on top of the WinUI library. And so when we make changes to the UI layer, you get that for free. And that's what happens in the case of Windows 11, where we rejuvenated the UI layer. So you will just get that for free by using React Native for Windows, which is pretty great. So let's switch gears and talk a little bit about the UI frameworks. And the first one I'm going to talk about is Fluent UI React Native. Right now, this is mostly for early adopters. We have a few controls that you can try and see if it works for you. We're in the process of adding new controls and being able to support additional scenarios as well. But what this is, so Fluent UI React Native is a set of controls that are supported across multiple platforms and that have the Fluent design system built in. And the Fluent design system is essentially a set of styles that is designed to look great across all platforms. So this comes built into the controls when you use them. Now, if for any reason you want to override the built-in design system to match what you would like to render, you can do that as well. So head over to github.com/Microsoft/Fluent UI React Native and you can learn more about it. And I'll show you a quick demo of how this works. So you have a macOS, an iOS, and an Android application. And what we're showing here is the difference between light mode and dark mode, as well as the ability to inject your own branding. So if you see, for example, Word is typically blue and Excel is green. And so you can customize it such that on Excel it looks green and on Word it looks blue. And so have that branding for those applications. And here's a couple of examples of controls that we have today. So these are the ones that are on macOS in light mode. These ones are controls on macOS using dark mode. These are the ones that are on iOS. And these ones are on Android. So again, this is an area that we're investing fairly heavily in as well. So you'll see more controls coming up, but feel free to give it a try and let us know what you think. So the next UI library that we'll talk about is React Native XAML. And what this is it's a library that exposes the XAML UI controls to React Native for Windows. If you're not familiar with XAML, what it is it's the native UI framework that's built into Windows. And what React Native XAML does is it provides a projection of those controls into JavaScript. So that allows you to write any of your view managers like purely in JavaScript without having to touch the native code at all. So let me show you a demo of what this looks like. And here, what we're doing is we're using the color picker of the XAML library. So with just a few lines of code, about like 5 lines or so, you can use the control inside of your application and then respond to the callbacks that it provides. So in this case, what we're doing is we are rendering the control and then just displaying the RGB values that are coming back into a text block. Pretty powerful control and very easy to use with just a few lines of code. So React Native XAML is intended for Windows developers who are familiar with the XAML language already and who are not planning to use their applications across multiple platforms. And then the third UI library that we'll talk about is Babylon React Native. So what this is first let's talk about Babylon.js. And Babylon.js is a very popular JavaScript library that is built on open web standards. So it is completely free and open source, and there's several really nice models that have been built using it. If you head over to the Babylon.js website, you will see hundreds of examples of this already. And Babylon.js on native is also supported on native platforms. So the first thing is that we have is Babylon Native, and it brings that power of Babylon.js over to those native platforms. And Babylon React Native is the integration of that Babylon Native platform into React Native. So what it does is it provides you a React Native component that you can use as a rendering surface for your Babylon model. And you can use that to render the model and etc. This is currently supported on iOS, and Android and Windows. So over to a quick demo. this is for example one that's actually running on Android here that shows you live reload working. So you have a couple of models, and on the left side, what we're doing is we're just switching between them. And so here's the first one, and we went to the second one. Now we can go back to the first one, etc. And so that's completely supported in React Native for Windows. And one of the experiences that you can build there is an augmented reality one. And so here's the same model that was built earlier running on top of the HoloLens device. So we can render it inside of the space that the person is seeing in augmented reality, which is pretty cool. And again, that's running on top of React Native for Windows. So those were a few UI frameworks that we provide. There's a lot of work going on there. Let us know what you think. Try them. Happy to hear feedback on how your experience is using them. And so now let's talk a little bit about tooling, and I will mention a couple of things. So one is we recently built a test app. We call it the React Native test app. That simulates, like a real React Native application on multiple platforms. So iOS, Android, macOS, and Windows. And it's really nice because it abstracts a lot of the complexity of all those platforms for you, allowing you to just go ahead and just write your applications on top fairly easily. And the other thing that's cool about it is that we have a workflow that's supported that allows you to quickly switch between React Native versions. And that's important because you can then just try a newer version and see how your experience will run in a very quick and efficient manner. So the link for this one is github.com/Microsoft/React Native test app. The other one I will mention is a repo called RNXKit that is also supported by Microsoft. So what this is it's a set of tools that we built to help you maintain and build your React Native applications and libraries. It's a lot of things that we learned as we were building our own applications that where we felt we needed small tools to help us. And all of those are in this RNXKit repo. So I put a table on the right here where you can see some examples of those tools. But I would say if you're interested in learning more about this, we have a separate talk at the React Native EU conference where we will discuss that. So that talk is by Lorenzo Chandra and Tommy Nguyen, and it's called Improve All the Repos. Highly recommend that you check this out. We will go into a lot more details around one of the tools that is in the RNXKit as well as the React Native test app. Cool. So next, I'm going to talk a little bit about the applications that have been built using React Native. And maybe starting with one that you might have heard already. So Facebook is building the new Messenger application on top of React Native for Windows and macOS. And this is a great testament of the power of the platform. It allows you to build your app once and have it running on both operating systems. So you've heard about that one, and I will now talk about a couple of other ones that you may not have heard about. So the first one is the Nomadix Backpack application. And what it is it's a digital classroom experience with tools that are integrated for students and teachers to use. The app was originally developed for iOS and Android, and then Nomadix saw that there was a high demand for Windows as well. And so what they did was they migrated the application to Windows using React Native for Windows. Now you can imagine like those applications right now are really important, especially with people working, studying remotely and needing really good applications for them to be able to do this efficiently. And so here's a screenshot of the dashboard for Nomadix. You can see it's very detailed. It gives you an idea of the classes that you have, the assignments that you need to do, etc. The next one is what Nomadix calls its Smart Paper experience. And this one is actually using the React Native Sketch Canvas. So it supports touch, it supports inking. And what it does is it allows you to, for example, here, do a long division and enter your content step by step. And that's really nice because the teacher can then replay the steps that the student did and identify areas where they might have made mistakes and help them there. So in some cases, these applications are optimized for touch, as in the case of when you're running on Android. And when you're running on Windows with touch support, you can use that as well. The next one is the one called Smart Label. And so this one allows you to take a static image and be able to add labels to them dynamically. So really cool experience as well for kids so that they can label things as part of their workflow. Cool. And then let's look at the second application. So this one is coming from Mashrek Bank, and Mashrek is the oldest regional bank in the United Arab Emirates, and it has offices in several continents. So here's what Mashrek had. They had an Android application already that was being used by their frontline workers to interact with their customers. And what they needed was a similar application for Windows, because part of their employees were using Windows devices. So they used React Native for Windows in order to stand up that application. Now, what's great about it here as well is that on Android, the application is optimized for touch. And on Windows, it's optimized for mouse and keyboard, thanks to the built-in support that we have there already. The team was able to do this while sharing the majority of the code between the Android and the Windows application, which is a really nice win as well. So this is a screenshot of what they built. This is the logging part of their experience. And then when a user is logged in, you can see what a sample customer information page would look like. So this is also very rich, and again, built on top of React Native for Windows with a lot of code shared between the Android and the Windows implementation. Cool. And then let's talk a little bit about how Microsoft is using React Native on desktop platforms. So we've got several apps, again, I mentioned that we've been shipping already. Some are brownfield applications, some are greenfield ones, but at this point, we're shipping to hundreds of millions of customers around the world. So we'll talk about Office first. And Office builds brownfield applications in the client apps. So think about Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Outlook. There's at least an experience in it today running React Native. And these are shipping in iOS, on Android, on macOS, and on Windows. As a couple of examples, this is a revamp of our commenting experience. So previously, when you commented in Word, it used to be inline on the canvas. We've now moved it to a pane and provide you a very rich experience where you can comment and interact with other users who are looking at the document. This is a screenshot of what that experience actually looks like. The next one is our privacy dialog. This is, again, like completely built using React Native. This is the dialog that you get when you sign into Office for the first time, and then to be able to set your privacy settings. And then this one is what we call the Unity Canvas. It's a place where we can advertise some really cool features around the application that we would encourage people to use. So these are examples for Office, and then we can talk about React Native for Windows on Xbox. And you might have seen those screenshots already because we've shared them before. But again, I just wanted to show the richness that we have here. So there are multiple experiences today on Xbox that are shipping on React Native. And if you have a fairly recent version of the operating system and an Xbox at home, chances are you're running React Native on it. So here's an example. When you get to the Xbox events, this page is built using React Native. Once you go inside and start looking more about the events, you get into a new React Native for Windows view that you can interact with. Here's a couple of additional screenshots with showing apps that you can purchase, and a set of search results. So we had really great feedback from our Xbox colleagues as well on their usage of React Native. They highlighted a lot of really good performance improvements that they saw, and if you're using this experience on the Xbox, you'll notice that it's very, very smooth. So it was a great experience for us. And so, how do you get started writing your own React Native applications? So the first thing you want to do is head over to aka.ms/React Native, and we have a bunch of getting started guides there. You can start, writing an app from scratch, or you can port an existing app that you have for Android or for iOS over to Windows and macOS. And we'd be very happy to hear, how your experience is and what are the things that you've been able to do. So you can always connect with us on GitHub if you have any questions as well that we can help you with. So just as a short demo, I went over to that website, and in the interest of time, I already set up an environment. So here I am on my macOS laptop, and I am running a virtual machine for Windows. And what you can see is the application for our test application. When you go through the first experience, you will get this test application. On the left one is the one for Windows, and the right one is the one for macOS. And so I have the development experience set up, and I already downloaded the prerequisites. I have my bundler running. And so what I will do next is go ahead and just show you what this looks like. So on the Mac, you will use Xcode, and we have live reload working, for example. So here, I'm increasing my font size from 24 to 48. Once I save, you can see the live reload working pretty quickly in the test application, and that's all fully supported. And the same thing on React Native for Windows as well. So here I'm using Visual Studio. You can use Visual Studio Code as well. Let me just make this a little bit bigger, and I'll just try the same thing. So change the font size, and then go ahead and save. The new bundle will get pushed there, and here you can see on the left that the font just became bigger. So you can try those as well. It's very easy to get started and write an application on both of those platforms. So give it a shot. Let us know how it is, and we'll be very happy to hear what your experience was like. So with that, that's the end of my presentation. So I'd like to thank you for listening. Thank you also for ColdStack to set this conference up. It's really great to have everyone together to talk about those experiences. And I know it takes a lot of time to get those conferences up and running. So thank you again. If you want to get in touch with me, my contact info is here on this page. And then I have on the left a link to all of the repos that we talked about in this presentation. So again, if you want to get started, aka.ms/React Native, give it a shot. Let us know how things go. And again, thank you for listening, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye.